Let's pick one of the images to refine. Let's spend some time defining the form, values, lighting, and decide on where we want to place our focal point. Now in this scene, I'm thinking of making the midground rock to be the main focal point, and maybe we could also add a person in the foreground somewhere, so it gives us a sense of scale. Now those shadows that you're seeing me working on, I'm actually imagining that there are other rocks outside the frame, so those rocks can be casting some kind of shadow onto these midground rocks. Now I'm just going to scale this foreground rock up just a little bit. I'm trying to push the sense of depth and drama. Now the design in this painting is fairly simple, but every time you're designing something new, remember to always have a hook. I think this term is also used in music, but we need to always add something we are already familiar with and can connect with. Adding a person is probably an obvious choice, but it could be things like vehicles, animals, plants, or even buildings. So let's say we were to design an alien planet. It's important to understand that by adding shapes that resemble something we know from our world, it allows us to engage with that world, that new alien planet. So for example, alien plants in this planet can sort of look like plants in our world. It's basically the design principle form follows function. Really crucial. Now I am using a textured brush here, and it's basically a flat hard brush, but when I paint, I don't usually use too many brushes. I do have many brushes though in my preset, but I actually haven't used 70 to 80% of them. I'll just keep it there to look cool, but we don't really need many brushes to do a painting. You could even actually paint the whole image with just one single brush, and you can do it with a basic default round Photoshop brush. Now I should have mentioned this earlier, but in this tutorial we are not going to be using photos. We're going to be painting this manually. At times I actually still think, and depending on the brief, but painting manually can be faster than using photos. I mean, I know artists who have a really well sorted library, so they can pull out these photos anytime, but looking for the right photos can take a lot of time, so be careful not to be consumed by it. Unless you're doing a matte painting. I mean, matte painting is a very different sport. The basics is very similar though. Now there was a time where, and this happened at work, there was a time when a group of designers were given exactly the same brief at the same time, because there was a scene in a story that really needed work. Now a few of them started looking for the right photos, and by the time they had started on the painting process, the others who started without the photos already had a rough painting established, and so the art directors already made some decisions before the other guys started their painting. Now this doesn't happen often, but when it does, at least you know you're capable of doing it manually, and it will always give you an advantage and confidence that you can do it manually. I mean, learning to use photos isn't a waste of time. It is very, very useful, but well, I mean, I'm basically saying that you want to be able to do it manually as well. Now let's talk about being a designer and what it's like, because it's hard to understand, and I know it took me a while to digest. Now, I am talking from a view of working in-house for a company, maybe in an art or design department, rather than freelance, because they are different. Now, there are two types of designers, one who's more idea driven and the other who are more engineering driven, technically driven, like illustrations. They tend to be more technical. Now, they do both require creative ideas and illustrative skills, but when they are both put in the same room, their individual strengths become more obvious. Now, there are designers who can work and do well in both, but there are those who tend to focus on one. It's actually the same in automotive design. There are two types of studios, and these two are usually located in completely different places. One is advanced studios, where they work on concept cars to push technologies for marketing purposes, and there's the other one, production studios, where they use the concept cars as a reference or inspiration or a base to design a more legal cars for the customers. It's really important to find your strength, and you may eventually pursue for both, but it's good to know what you want to showcase when you're talking to a potential employer or a client if you're freelancing. I'm not actually really a technical person. I actually really enjoy the emotional approach rather than the technical approach. So when I work, and the way I present myself at work is with many variety of ideas. I enjoy producing ideas. I really like options and setting directions rather than finishing it. But obviously that doesn't mean I don't finish a painting. It's just that oftentimes I'm hired to come up with options rather than a nice marketing image. Okay, it's coming to an end, so let's wrap it up.